Long before houses and bright streetlights appeared near the hills, there was a forest where the night truly belonged to the dark. When the sun disappeared behind the trees, the forest slowly changed. Owls opened their wide eyes. Crickets began their quiet music. Frogs called softly from the edges of small ponds. And then the most beautiful part of the night began. Tiny lights started appearing between the trees. At first, there were only a few small flickers floating above the grass. Then more appeared, and more, until the entire forest began to glow. Thousands of fireflies rose gently into the night air, blinking their soft golden lights as they drifted through the branches. From far away, it looked as if the forest itself had filled with stars. Among them lived a young firefly named Lumo. Lumo had only recently learned how to fly. His wings were still new, and sometimes he moved a little clumsily through the air. But his light was bright. Every night he rose from the grass with the others, practicing the slow blinking patterns that fireflies use to speak to one another. Because for fireflies, light is more than beauty. It is how they communicate. Each small flash is a message. Some flashes say, "I am here." Others say, "Follow me." And some simply say, "You are not alone." For many generations, the fireflies had filled the forest with these quiet, glowing signals. The darkness made their lights easy to see. The tall trees protected them, and the night remained calm and undisturbed. Lumo loved watching the glowing cloud of fireflies drifting through the branches. To him, it felt like the entire forest was alive with light. But one night, while flying higher than usual, Lumo noticed something strange beyond the trees. Far away near the hills, a new light had appeared. It was not like a firefly. It did not blink. It did not move. It simply shone brightly in the distance. And slowly, night after night, more of those lights began to appear. At first, the distant lights did not seem important. They were small and far away, glowing quietly beyond the hills. The forest remained dark, and the fireflies continued their nightly dance through the trees. Lumo still rose into the warm air each evening with the others, blinking his tiny lantern as he practiced the signals he had learned. But the lights on the hills did not stay small for long. More appeared each week. New houses were built. Roads stretched closer to the forest. Tall lamps were placed along the paths, and bright windows began to shine long after the sun had disappeared. Soon the edge of the forest no longer fell completely into darkness. A pale glow hovered over the trees. The fireflies noticed the change before anyone else. Some of their signals became harder to see. Against the new brightness, their tiny flashes looked weaker. Sometimes Lumo blinked toward another firefly and received no reply. The message had been lost in the light. Night after night, the forest grew brighter. The new lights did not blink like fireflies. They did not rest. They did not fade. They simply shone constantly, pushing away the darkness. Slowly, the glowing clouds between the trees began to shrink. Some fireflies moved deeper into the forest, where the shadows were still thick. Others disappeared completely. Lumo noticed the difference. Where thousands of lights once floated through the branches, there were now only hundreds. The forest that once looked like a sky full of fallen stars now flickered weakly in scattered places. One night, Lumo flew high above the trees again. From there, he could see the forest and the growing town beyond it. The town shone brightly. The forest looked dim, and for the first time, Lumo felt something he had never felt before. The night was slowly disappearing. The nights grew brighter with every passing season. More houses appeared along the hills. More lamps lit the roads. Even deep inside the forest, the sky no longer turned completely dark. A pale glow hung over the trees long after sunset. For the fireflies, this was a serious problem. Their small flashes depended on darkness to be seen. Without the deep black night, their signals faded into the background like whispers in a crowded room. One by one, Fewer lights rose from the grass each evening. Many fireflies had already disappeared. Some moved farther into the deeper forest. Others never returned at all. Soon, when night arrived, only a few scattered lights blinked between the trees. Lumo noticed the silence. Where thousands of glowing signals once filled the air, there were now long stretches of darkness without a single reply. Still, every night he continued to rise from the grass. He blinked his light again and again, hoping another firefly would answer. Sometimes one did, sometimes none did. One evening, while drifting near the edge of the forest, Lumo noticed something different. A group of humans had gathered along a small trail. They stood quietly looking toward the trees, speaking softly to one another. One of them pointed into the darkness. Another shook their head sadly. They had noticed the change too. The forest that once glowed with fireflies had almost gone dark. In the days that followed, the humans began doing something unusual. Some of the bright lamps near the forest were turned off earlier at night. Shields were placed over others, so their light pointed downward instead of spilling across the trees. Slowly, the night began to return. At first, the change was small. Weeks passed. Then one warm summer evening, as the sky faded into night, Lumo rose once again from the grass. He blinked his small lantern. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, from deeper in the trees, another light answered. A second flash, then another, and another. Tiny sparks began appearing between the branches. More rose from the ground. More drifted through the leaves, until slowly, gently, the forest began to glow again. Not as brightly as before, not yet, but enough to remind the forest of what it once was. Lumo floated among the returning lights, blinking his signal happily as other fireflies answered from the darkness. The night had nearly been lost, but it had not disappeared completely. And as long as the forest still held darkness, the fireflies would always find their way back, because even the smallest lights need the night to shine.